Earlier this month, I watched a video of 36 different local news anchors all repeating the exact same phrase. Now, these are local news anchors, so it made me wonder. I saw the video on Twitter from Deadspin, a national media organization, on their Twitter feed in 2018, and the video really piqued my interest because normally Twitter and other social media sites that we like to go on, they usually try to point things and make things more clickbait. So this video was interesting. The more I dug into it, I found it was from Sinclair Broadcasting Group, a telecommunications company that owns a lot of local TV stations. And when I looked into them, I found out that Sinclair is modifying our news. So today, first I'm going to tell you about Sinclair as a company, and then I'm going to tell you about the impact they have on their news stations they own. So first I'll tell you about Sinclair. Sinclair is the largest local TV station owner in the United States, owning almost 200 stations right now. They're viewable in about 39% of households, and this information is from Katerina Matza, who has 3 degrees in related fields of political science and communications, and works for the Pew Research Center, and this article is from 2017. Now, all these stations are only going to get bigger because they're looking to buy Tribune Media, which is the about 4th or 5th biggest local news station owner. And when they combine, according to Joshua McCran, a doctorate student, in his paper in 2018, he speculates that they'll be viewable in 72% of households. And the FCC only allows them to be viewable in 39% of households, which is almost half of what Sinclair would be viewable in. And this raises a lot of questions, but this is because a loophole in the FCC's regulation of how the viewership is accounted for. This is a $3.9 billion deal when they acquired Tribune, which is very likely to happen, and it shows just how big Sinclair is getting. And now that I've told you a bit about their company, I'm going to tell you about the impact they have on their stations. One example of impact they've had on their stations is the structural content change that they have. They've been demonstrating a conservative bias in stations they own. Now, this is okay on a national scale, but when it's applied to local news stations under the guise that they're local news, I take a little bit more issue with it. And these local stations have a conservative bias, according to Eric Levitz, a New York Mag reporter, in an article he wrote for the New York Mag in 2017. One example of this bias that he illustrated was that they had 15 different interviews with President nominee at the time, Donald Trump, compared to only 5 with Hillary Clinton. Now, this is a really big discrepancy in airtime, but it wasn't just for the presidential race, it was for other levels of politics. Along with having conservative rhetoric, they also increased the amount of national politics coverage on their stations. It was almost a 25% increase, according to Joshua McCran, whom I cited earlier. And this is really significant because it takes away from the local news that local news stations are built to give you. In addition to the structural changes Sinclair has, they also impact their stations by using must-run segments. Now, these must-runs, according to Justin Simmons, an editor at a former Sinclair-owned station who retired or quit because of Sinclair, in his Washington Post article in 2018, the must-runs are really pushing their rhetoric and agenda. One example of this is the video I referenced at the start of my speech. That was 36 different local news anchors all denouncing the fake news media in a suggested statement from Sinclair to the local TV stations. Other stations might have changed the wording slightly, but 36 used the exact words that Sinclair gave them to use. One other example of Sinclair forcing content is segments that they produce and send to local TV stations, one of which is The Bottom Line with Boris. And Boris is one of President Trump's former advisors on his campaign and is now creating content for Sinclair. However, his content is relatively pointed, but yet, and it's a national thing, but he's getting sent around to local TV stations like he's a local weatherman or something else. So today I've established some background about Sinclair Broadcasting Group as a company and the impact they have on their stations. And Sinclair is modifying our news. And it's important for us as consumers of information when we're looking at Twitter and Facebook to really look into what we're reading and seeing and making sure that it's not a slant under the guise of something else, like Sinclair's rhetoric under the guise of local news.